All right, welcome back to SQL in 6 minutes and happy Easter, everyone. We're going to do a quick video today on documentation best practices and following in my father's footsteps, kind of in a joke, but he used to tell me all the time that you should always put it in writing. And the reason is because people's memories are fallible, and fundamentally, if it's not in writing, he used to say that it doesn't exist. And there's some truth to that. So if you have a smaller client or you manage some smaller clients, one of the things, if you're doing kind of, let's say, a standard DBA setup or application setup, there are definitely times in which you don't probably need to document quite as much. For instance, if you're running, let's say, integrity checks on a database and backing it up, what I usually do is I will, state up front, these are the things that I'm going to do. This is why they have, this is what they do, this is what they're for, etc. And explain that to clients, and always, be upfront if there's an error, there's an issue. The sooner they know about it, the better. But if it's in a large environment, let's say you're in an environment with 500 plus servers, and each server has, 7 databases each. So you have, 3,000 plus databases. It starts to become very difficult to remember why you did certain things because this database may be configured a certain way and this may not. Same thing with applications. If you're running 12 different applications, it may start to get difficult to remember why this is done or why that's done. For instance, a lot of the application processes I have for Bitcoin are very different than the application processes I have for something like Dash or Ethereum. And the same thing with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. There's a different approach to those. Because Bitcoin is a smaller, what I think of as being a smaller application overall, it's pretty straightforward. I don't have to worry so much about documenting that, whereas those others I definitely do for myself. So when you document a process or an environment, of course, here's just some suggestions that I found are really helpful. Whether you're the one that's reading it for the first time or whether you're the one that's building it, is first of all, explain the vision or the goal, right? The goal of this Bitcoin application is to, get the latest Bitcoin information from these 5 exchanges every 5 minutes. Just a hypothetical example, okay? Then delineate the process, and this can be, this is written in Python code, and this if statement, checks if the last 5 minutes was, looked at, and then it goes and gets it if it was, and if it wasn't, then it does, etc., right? This is where you're going to really delineate. You can include code blocks, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, unless, and that may be very appropriate if you're going to be passing off the, let's say, the document to a junior developer. But if you're passing off to, let's say, mid or more, they should know how to read code. And if your code is readable, then definitely on your bullet points, highlight what's being done, but they should be able to pick that up in the code. Then here's a big one. Detail the pros and cons. Every approach is going to have good things about it and bad things. For instance, one of the pros in really bad architecture, more often than not, I try to not to laugh when I say this too hard, but is that it'll save the company a lot of money if everything works perfectly, right? Well, if it never goes down, only having, a single point of failure everywhere, if it never runs into an issue, that's perfectly fine, right? We don't need backups. We can save all kinds of time, right? Problem is what happens if it goes down? Oh, yeah, that's right. And then the other thing, too, here is once you're done detailing the pros and the cons, is sign the document, put your name, attach your name to it. Okay, and there are 2 really big key benefits. There are many benefits, but there are 2 key benefits to documenting in this manner. If something occurs that you list in the cons, you've made it clear up front, right? Like my dad says, you have it in writing. You made it clear, you have it in writing, you sent it to everyone knows. So they can't be like, well, wait a minute. They know. It also reduces the, wait, why did I, and then whatever it is, right? Like, and I run into this myself. I'll for Dash especially, I have a couple of different processes, and there have been several times I'm like, wait, why was I doing it that way this one time? And if you document it, then you save yourself time, okay? And you save other people time. We do run into these issues when developing an application or process. It's just part of life. Humans, we're forgetful. I'm forgetful too. Also, the people who come after you can also pick up on the how, why, what, etc. So just a quick example of this. We'll use the Doe's. So John Doe is the first person, and he, of course, documents a process. He adds his pros and cons, signs his name, etc. Okay? Jane Doe comes along, and let's say John Doe gets promoted to management, so now Jane Doe is managing it. And so she updates the document because more than likely there's going to be some other things that, she picks up on. So she updates that, adds her name as well as her observation and changes. Maybe she found a couple of cons that John didn't list, and maybe there were a couple of pros that she also found. Then Sarah comes in. Let's say Sarah and Jane are now working together. She sees the document, but she also updates it because she notices some other things. She adds her names as well. As her observation and changes. But then she gets promoted, let's say, to, senior management. And so they hire Seth Doe. And so Seth Doe arrives. Now, here's a question. Based on the fact that John Doe, Jane Doe, and Sarah Doe have all added their names, updated the document, how much work do you think Seth Doe is going to have to do, right? And how quickly do you think Seth Doe will be able to resolve issues if something occurs, right? Plus, the great thing is he has it in writing, and that's wonderful because when there's like, oh my gosh, well, we didn't know, he can say, well, actually, John Doe, Jane Doe, and Sarah Doe all said this, right? So each person has less work than the previous person, and of course, in general, as my dad would say, it's in writing, so people can't claim ignorance, what they tend to do. So again, welcome back and happy Easter.